celebrating 15 years of possibility. Pilot Flying J and Halloran Hilton Hill present Anything is Possible. Today's guest, Gordon Whitener, Part 1.
Welcome to Anything is Possible. As you know, these are great stories about great people whose lives prove possibility. My name is Halloran Hilton Hill, and my guest today is Gordon Whitener. Thank you for being here today.
It's a pleasure to be here, Hal.
Let's start with the hat.
It's, you know, there are pictures of me when I was a little boy wearing a cowboy hat. It's just something that's always been in my wardrobe, and as I've gotten older and cared less about what people think, I wear as much as I possibly can. So
let's go back to your childhood. Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Dalton, Georgia, a couple hours down the road.
The carpet capital of the world.
It's a tremendous place to grow up.
What was it like growing up in Dalton?
It was really magical. The industry was on a tremendous ascend, and life there was just amazing. You know, it was a lot of growth, which led to great parks and recreation, you know, great school systems. Really, the community was very vibrant. So all of the things that you would hope for as a child growing up, I would say we were very fortunate to grow up there.
Tell me about your folks.
My mom and dad, you know, were very special. They're passed now, unfortunately. Lost my mom in 2010, and actually 2006, and my dad in 2010. My mother was truly a Southern just beauty. She was amazing, always positive, taught me so many things in life. My dad was he was born in 29, so came out of the Depression, so was very conservative, very tough at times, but very loving. And we had, I have a brother and sister. We had an amazing childhood. Now I came along much later, which leads me to think I probably was an accident. But
me too.
But my brother's 10 years older, and my sister's 8 years older. So I was my mom's little boy, you know, just running around. She carted me everywhere. So
my sister is 9 years older than me. My father was born in 1923 in Chattanooga, so not too far away.
No, Rome, Georgia, from my parents.
So growing up there, were you an athlete?
I was fortunate to have tremendous coaches growing up, and a lot of them are still very influential in my life. My thing was football and baseball. That was kind of, you know, I did run some track, but football and baseball were my loves, and just played at Dalton High School, and ultimately signed out of high school to play baseball here at Tennessee, and was terrible, very well documented. And
how do you define terrible?
Well, just bad. And when I got cut, I literally walked across the hall and started working for the Coach Majors and his staff, and just was an equipment manager starting out, and just sort of worked my way up until I coached in college a little bit later. So,
what did you imagine your life was going to be?
At that time, you know, the only goal I had was to be a big-time college football coach, to be on a Division I college football staff. That was since I was 8 years old. That was sort of my goal. Coaches had been so influential in my life. I loved just the camaraderie of sports, and football made it even better. I loved the football coaches. Really from playing Pee Wee football all the way up through high school. I was blessed just to have great men in my life that sort of kept me on a path.
What did being cut, though, do to you?
It was humbling. I mean, it was, you feel like you're letting people down. I feel like I let my coaches in baseball down. Certainly the guys that took a chance on, giving what little bit of scholarship money I got from Tennessee. I felt like I let some people down for sure. But, fortunately, because of the life lessons that I had learned coming in there, again, from all these coaches and from my parents, and even my brother and sister, you just push through it, and it was a new day. I turned the page, and I can joke about it now, but it was painful for a while and embarrassing, but I moved on.
We'll take a break. When we come back, Gordon Whitener is my guest. We'll talk about being a page turner in life, because you've had to turn a few.
Absolutely.
This is Anything is Possible.
Possibility powered by Pilot Flying J, Covenant Health, Home Federal, and the Knoxville News Sentinel. Coming up.
Coach Majors was a tough guy to work for, a great guy to work for, but he was tough, demanding. He was always on time and just demanding the best out of people. And so I took away a lot of that with me.
This is Anything is Possible. I'm Halloran Hilton Hill, and this is Gordon Whitener. And we left off in your story. You got cut from the team. You started working for Johnny Major's staff. The vision at that point was Division I college football coaching, and you're working for a legend.
Yeah, it was a tremendous experience just to be around. I used to kid when I was in the industry that, Coach Majors was a tough guy to work for, a great guy to work for, but he was tough, demanding. And when you're young, that's exactly what you need. And so there was, the 4 years I was here, there was a lot of turnover in the staff, which for a young guy was great because it just meant more contacts, more people that you got close to that went off to another school. And so by the time I graduated, we had a pretty good, network of coaches that I could call on in the industry. And so it was, he was, the things that I remember about Coach Majors vividly are, he was, always impeccably dressed. He was, and he told me one time that really came from his dad. His dad said you always should have a great sport coat, and Coach Majors had lots of them. And he was always on time and just demanding the best out of people. And so I took away a lot of that with me.
So after UT, what did you do?
So I was very fortunate. I got a break and was hired at Oklahoma State University to be a graduate assistant coach there, helping coach the receivers with a guy named Houston Nutt. It was a lot of people know around here. And Houston, a guy named Kevin Steele had coached here and become a very good friend of mine, and he had gone and gotten on that staff. So I was there with Kevin and Houston Nutt, and we had a tremendous staff. Larry Coker was there, former head coach at Miami. Brad Seeley was a legend in special teams in the NFL. So it was just a bunch of young guys working hard, trying to get it done. We had a very good run there, as you know, with Thurman Thomas and Barry Sanders, and of course Mike Gundy, who's head coach at Oklahoma State, was our quarterback. So it was a good time. It was fun, and it was a great experience. I later was promoted to the full-time staff and became the recruiting coordinator at 22 years old, and so it was just a great few years. And then I got a very surprising offer that took me away from football. So
We turned that page. What was that offer?
it's a crazy story. You said carpet cap of the world. Here I am coaching at Oklahoma State, and the athletic director said, you're from Dalton, could you find us some carpet for the facilities? So, I had no idea. My dad was loosely associated with the industry, so I made a few phone calls, and my search led me to a guy named Charlie Idle. And Charlie was an Oklahoma State graduate running a carpet company in Dalton, Georgia, go figure. And so I called him. I said, here's who I am, and here's what we're looking for. And he said, look, I'm going to make a speech on campus to the business school in a couple of weeks. Let's have breakfast. So we sat down, had breakfast. I put this big pitch on him about how he needed to give us the carpet for the facilities, for his alma mater, and this impassioned plea. And about halfway through my pitch, he said, look, I'm going to give you the carpet, but I want you to come and work for me. That was it was a really tight. I sat back. I really didn't know how to respond to that, because I said, look, I'm living my life's dream. Thank you, but just not interested. And he was a smart guy. He said, look, I tell you what, you're off next weekend, because we had an off weekend. He said, why don't you fly home? I'll pay for it. You come see your mom and dad and just take a tour of the plant. And if you don't, if you still don't like it, then so be it. So I took him up his offer. I missed my parents, so it was great. I flew home, spent the weekend, toured, came back, and I said, look, I'm in the middle of the season. I'm the recruiting coordinator, and that follows the season, so I can't even think about something until February, late February. So I, went back about my business, but this guy, there was something about him, something magnetic about him, just kept drawing me to him. And so make a long story short, when the season was over, I had a couple of other opportunities in coaching pop up. I was really conflicted about how, to be loyal to Oklahoma State or should I go to someplace else. But this was still in my head about this guy, Charlie Idle. And to make a long story short, I made the decision to leave football and join this guy. And we were together for 12 years at 2 different companies. And
what did you end up doing for those companies?
So I started out in sales. They're both in the commercial carpet industry. I started out in sales, and I had a very fortunate career, did well, and moved very quickly up into management. So I, went from the typical thing, from sales to sales manager to national accounts to vice president to executive vice president. Then I became the president and CEO of a company called Interface Flooring Systems in LaGrange, Georgia, right about the time I was 31, something like that.
What were you doing in sales at that point? I mean, what was the volume?
Selling commercial carpet. I mean, you're really...
So what kind of a volume, though, was this company?
Oh, this company was at that time a couple $100 million.
And you're 31. What's going on in your life that everywhere you show up, you just matriculate up?
I think, I joke with my kids. My mother said, and I remember it vividly, you can do anything that you want to do. And the best answer I can give you is I believed her. It just, I'm no more special than the next guy. I had literally how people touch my life all along the way that gave me hope and belief in myself. And I can't tell you how important it is, I think, in life to have those kind of people around you. It means everything.
31 years old, you're running a company that's doing few $100 million a year. That's got to be pretty heady.
It was, I didn't think of it that way at the time because you're so driven and I look back and think, wow, should have enjoyed that more. But it was a historic run. We had tremendous results. It was a very special time, and it really came down to people. We out-peopled the competition, and that became a real hallmark for hopefully my whole career, but it was to surround yourself with people that are smarter and better than you are to make it go faster.
So what happened after that?
As I said, that was a 12-year run, very grateful for it. But at the end of it, I really sort of had my fill of big corporate America. We were a public company. I was, the CEO inside of a large public company, and I'd kind of had my fill of that. And so when that, my buddy had since left, Charlie had gone on, and I decided really I wanted to do something different. I wanted to be back in sports and business. That was kind of over those 12 years, I'd always had in the back of my head, let's do something in sports and business. So I probably took a little bit of a radical leap. I literally walked out that door and started my own small sports marketing company around rodeo and NASCAR, because I'd always had this thing for the West, as you can tell, and we launched that in 2000. That company still exists today. It's called United States Cowboy, and we still own it and operate it. But
so you started with nothing with the rodeo and that marketing company.
It was stupid.
What was the first thing you did?
So the first thing I did was we really took over a failing rodeo association in the southeastern United States, and it was a association, so we turned it into a private company, and it was and we started sanctioning rodeos all throughout the Southeast. We knew nothing about it. I just again brought in people that knew more than I did, and we built up a pretty reputable company. And then as we were going through that process, we got invited to run a much larger tour that was a televised tour, and so we did that. And today we run an online network in that company for Wrangler Jeans called the Wrangler Network, and it's a OTT live streaming. We live stream over 100 and something rodeos a year, and just But that's fortunately I have people smarter than me that run that. But that's what that company does today. So
it looks like throughout your life, somebody was sprinkling pixie dust on
It's
your
true.
dreams.
It's true. I certainly can't take the credit. I wasn't the best student. I'm not sure I was ever been the best at anything, but it was.
But I do think there's kind of a clue in what you said your mother told you about possibility and the fact that you bought that. So how does he end up with Burt Reynolds? And how does he end up running Host Communications? And how does all that happen? When we come back, you'll find out. This is Gordon Whitener. More in a moment on Anything is Possible.
Coming up,
I was determined to be a great father to, my children, and so it was just important for me to be a dad, and that was the fun part about the journey we've been on.
Welcome back to Anything is Possible. These are great stories about great people like Gordon Whitener, whose lives prove that anything is possible. So you're running a major carpet company and you go, wait a minute, this corporate life is not all it's cracked up to be. I'll start my own thing. And so you jettison that career, you start another company, and it takes off. Do you think that was you, or do you think it was just maybe God blessing you?
Well, no question, God's blessed my life in so many ways. It's immeasurable. So it certainly wasn't me. It was, part of the leaving corporate America was the timing of it, which we didn't touch on before. Was my wife Susie and I had just gone through divorces, and we were just coming together, and we had a blended family. I had a daughter, she had 2 sons. So part of it was I was sick of corporate America, and part of it was that I was sort of tired of that rat race, and I knew if we were going to try to blend these families, I needed to try to find something that I could do where I could be around more and I could control my own schedule. So all of this was coming together sort of at the same time. So when we built U.S. Cowboy, we were going along, doing fine, spending a lot of my own money. So it was. So when it got about 2 years into it, I said, I need to find some outside capital. So I started having some conversations about that, and that's what really led me to the parent company of Host Communications. They'd fallen on some hard times. They'd lost some big contracts, and so long story short, after some discussions, they asked me would I move to Lexington, Kentucky, and merge my company into theirs and run the company. So we did. We uprooted the family and moved to Kentucky, and it was a tremendous experience, but with both trials and tribulations, but again, a blessing. But 2 years into it, we'd made quite a pretty good turnaround, and I had a disagreement really with the board over where the company should go, and we decided to part ways in the summer of 2004, and it was again another humbling experience, but a good one too, because it led to good stuff.
What happened after that?
So I loved sports and business, and we'd been in it at that point for 4 years, and so we were, I'd really felt like we had made a lot of good strides and a good name for our family and for the people that worked for me. So I tried to buy Host Communications first, and they rebuffed my offer. And while I was doing that, I'd met some bankers, and they told me about a company that Paul Allen, the co-founder of Microsoft, was going to sell called Action Sports Media. And make a very long story short, I got in touch with them, and we made a deal, and I bought Action Sports Media. And Paul had all his stuff in Portland and Seattle, and I really had no intention of moving out there. But Action had a big presence here in Knoxville because of the Southeastern Conference, and Action owned and operated jumbotrons in some of the largest collegiate stadiums all over the country, but had a big presence here. So I made the headquarters here. We moved back to Knoxville after all those years, back from when I graduated from here in 1985, and so I'd been gone from here all that time. So we moved back here in the summer of 2005 and started running Action Sports Media with a private equity company as our backer. And we had a really nice run, and we sold the company 29 months later to a couple of strategic buyers. Everybody did, pretty well. My investors, I think, did very well for them. And so at that point, I was left again with sort of, okay,
you got to
time to turn a page.
Turn a page,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So how big was that deal?
The investors made 2 times their money in basically 29 months.
Good gracious.
So it was a good deal for everybody.
Who was Gordon Whitener the man through all of this, though? Because success can mask life.
That's a good question. I think a guy that always wanted to do right by his parents and his friends, and certainly a guy that had made some mistakes, failed at things, failed at marriage, failed at certainly in business, from time to time. I was determined to be a great father to my children, and I don't call my stepsons I never called them that, and never will. They're my sons, and so it was just important for me to be a dad, and that was the fun part about the journey we've been on. Susie and I have been married, we'll be married 20 years in November, has been the blending of our families and just the journey that we've taken together. So I wanted to be the best example I could be, and I haven't always excelled at that, but that was the goal.
Gordon Whitener is my guest. Coming up on the next episode, part 2, I would love to talk about what you learned from failure, and then 2 names, Burt Reynolds, T. Boone Pickens. How does all that come together? You'll find out next time on Anything is Possible.